rearranging the formula higher. Today's lesson will be looking at rearranging the equation, and we will be looking at higher level questions that you will be expected to answer if you're doing the higher paper or you're aiming for the higher grades. Let's have a look at some questions, some easier questions at the start, and then we'll have a look at some very tricky questions. So the first one, y equals the fifth root of 3 minus 2x squared, and we are making x the subject of the formula. Okay, so first things first, this is a grade 7 or 8 question in the exam, so A or A star. Right, so we need to get rid of the fifth root first. So how do we get rid of the fifth root? Well, to get rid of the fifth root, I've got to do the opposite, which is to the power of 5. So if I could do y to the power of 5 is that, and if I put that to the power of 5, it gets rid of the fifth root. So I'm just left with 3 minus 2x squared. So now I'm going to get rid of, on the 3 minus 2x squared side, any other number that's not got an x with it. So 3 doesn't have an x, let's get rid of it. I've got to subtract 3 on both sides, so that's a positive 3. So I've got y to the power of 5 subtract 3, and 3 take 3 would go away. So I'm just left with minus 2x squared. Right, how do I get rid of the minus 2 from the x squared? Well, minus 2x squared means minus 2 times x squared, doesn't it? So how do I get rid of a times by minus 2? Well, I've got to divide by minus 2. Divide by minus 2 on both sides. So here I'm left with y to the power of 5 minus 3 divided by minus 2 equals x squared. How do you get rid of the x squared? You do the opposite, so you do square root. Y to the power of 5 minus 3 divided by minus 2 equals x. Now you can write this in a different way, so swap it around. X equals the square root of y to the power of 5 minus 3 over minus 2, and there is your answer. Okay, let's have a look at a different question then. So this time, f equals 3g h minus 4 over f, and I want g as the subject of the formula. So first things first, let's get rid of the denominator. Okay, we do not need the denominator. Get rid of that, don't need that. So how do you divide by f? Or times by f? So f times f is f squared, and I divide by f and times by f cancel. So I'm just left with that. Now, here's the most important bit. You might be tempted to expand the bracket here, but just take a moment and just look at the question. You need to have g as a subject of the formula. If I expand this out, I'm not going to get anywhere because I'm going to have 3gh minus 12g. I've got g in both places. This way, the g is factorized and it's only in one place. If your subject, the thing that you want as your subject is in two places, there's going to be a problem. You're going to struggle trying to get it on one side. So it's already factorized for you. So leave it as it is. Let's get rid of the bracket. Well, a bracket in maths means times. So I'm going to divide by h minus 4, divide by h minus 4. So I've got f squared divided by h minus 4 equals 3g because a times and divide cancel. Well, now I can get rid of the 3 because 3g means 3 times g. So how do we get rid of times by 3? I divide by 3. So I could just write that here below. Okay, in a bracket with g. Again, I could change the order. And what I could have done here is I could have just divided by 3 and the bracket h minus 4 in one go as well if I wanted to. Right, let's have a look at another example then. So this time we'll do w equals the square root of 3t plus 7 over 2t, and I want to make t the subject of the formula. Okay, so first things first, get rid of the square root. How do we get rid of the square root? Well, you do the opposite, so you need to square it. So I've got w squared here. If I square that, I get rid of the square root. Okay, so at the moment I've got to divide by 2t. That's useless to me because I want a positive t. So I need to get rid of a divide by 2t. And by doing that, I'm going to have to times both sides by 2t. So if I times w squared by 2t, I end up with 2tw squared. And if I times this by 2t, well, the divide by 2t vanishes, plus 7. Okay, let's get rid of that, plus 7. Okay, so I've got t here and I've got t here. Again, that's useless for me. It's on both sides. So when you have a situation like this where you've got the subject and it's on both sides, you've got to bring it on one side. So I'm just going to get rid of this 3t. And by doing that, I'm going to subtract 3t. Well, 2tw squared minus 3t. I can't take it away from that because that doesn't have a w squared with it. So it's going to stay as it is. 3t, take 3t is nothing. I'm just left with 7. Now I've got t and t here. So I need to factorize to take the t out. So t times what is 2tw squared? It's going to be 2w squared. Minus, well, t times what is minus 3t? Just minus 3 equals 7. How do you get rid of a bracket in maths? Well, you divide because a bracket means time. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2w squared minus 3. 2w squared minus 3. Okay, well, that cancels. So I'm left with 7 over 2w squared minus 3. And that is my answer. Okay. Okay, let's have a look at some other questions from GCSE papers. I'm just going to pick some ones out from higher papers. We'll start from, again, not so difficult, and then we'll move on to making them quite difficult. So I need to make W the subject of the formula. And my equation is H equals the square root of W over L. Okay, and this is worth 2 marks in the GCSE exam. Okay. Okay, right. So again, you get rid of the square root, so similar to what we've done before. So you square both sides, H squared, and it gets rid of the square root. I want to make W, so I need to get rid of divide by L, so times by L, so that becomes LH squared, carry it the other way. Divide by L and times by L cancel, so I'm just left with W equals LH squared. Okay, lovely. Right, let's have a look at another question then in GCSE exam. Okay, this one, it says the formula for the curved surface area A of a cylinder is A equals 2 pi r h. Okay, where r is the radius and h is the height. Okay, first part of the question, calculate the value of r when A equals 19.8 and h equals 2.1, and then we'll have a look to see what the other question says. Okay, so I have got a formula here that represents the curved surface area of a cylinder, and it's A equals 2 pi RH. The first part of the question is, well, I've got to work out the value of the radius when A equals 19.8 and H equals 2.1. I'm just going to say that's the only question we're going to answer because the rearranging is in this question. So value of R, well, I know to work out A, I've got to do 2 times pi times radius times height. So if I want to work out the value of the radius, I've got to rearrange this equation to get it radius equals before I can substitute the values in. Or you could substitute the values in and then rearrange it afterwards. But let's do it algebraically first. Let's rearrange and then substitute. So I've got A equals 2 pi RH. Now, you could do this in one go because that there means A equals 2 times pi times radius times height. I want to get rid of a times by 2, a times by pi, and a times by h. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to divide by 2 pi h. So if I divide this side by 2 pi h, divide this side by 2 pi h, and you can see that cancels, okay, because it's a multiply relationship. So the radius is a over 2 pi h. Now I know what the radius is. I can now substitute the values in. Well, it says a was 19.8 divided by 2 times pi times 2.1. I'm just going to do that on my calculator. So 19.8, divide that by 2 times pi times 2.1. And I end up with 1.5 to 1 decimal place. Okay. And there we are. Okay. Let's have a look at a different question then, a different GCSE style question. Okay, let's have a look. So this time you need to make h the subject of the formula. So I've got a equals 2 pi r and then r plus h. Okay. So I can't do anything because my equation is trapped by a bracket, so I need to multiply the bracket out. So I'm going to have a equals 2 pi radius squared plus 2 pi rh. Okay, pretty simple now, isn't it? I'm going to get rid of this here by subtracting. So a minus 2 pi r squared equals 2 pi rh. Now I just want h, so I need to get rid of a 2 pi r by dividing, because that means 2 times pi times radius. So to get rid of a times by 2 times pi times r, I need to divide this by 2 pi r, and I'm left with, well, this side is a minus 2 pi radius squared divided by 2 pi r, and obviously that cancels, so I'm just left with h, and that is my answer. Okay. Let's have a look at a different question then. We want to make y the subject, and my equation is 3 and then y plus 2x minus 1 equals x plus 5y. Okay, so this here again is trapped by brackets, so we need to multiply out. 3y plus 6x minus 3 equals x plus 5y. Right, we want y as a subject of the formula. So anything with a y, bring it on one side. It's up to you, whichever side you want. There's no right or wrong way, but I'm just going to bring this onto the other side. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 5y. You could do it the other way. You could subtract 3y if you want a positive y. That's minus 2y plus 6x minus 3 equals x, because 5y take 5y is nothing. Now, these two both don't have a y with it, so I need to get rid of it. How do you get rid of a 6 plus 6x? Well, I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. So first, here I'm just left with minus 2y minus 3. Well, that's 1x, take away 6x, that's minus 5x. The minus 3 doesn't have a y with it, so let's get rid of that. So we have to add 3 on both sides. Minus 2y, minus 3 add 3 is nothing, minus 5x plus 3. Right, minus 2y means minus 2 times y. How do you get rid of a minus 2 times y? Well, I divide by minus 2. Minus 2 divided by minus 2, just 1. So 1y is minus 5x plus 3 divided by minus 2. Okay. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Here, if we, let's have a look where it would have been a bit different. Zoom out. Okay, here. We've got 3y plus 6x minus 3 equals x plus 5y. I could have chosen to subtract 3y on both sides. 3y to 3y is nothing. I'm left with 6x minus 3 equals x. And that's going to be, let's get rid of that, x plus 2y. And then you need to get rid of the x by subtracting x. That would be 5x minus 3 equals 2y. And then obviously I just divide by 2. And 5x minus 3 divided by 2 is y. And there we are. Now, you might be looking and saying, well, actually, that there is different to that. It's not, okay, because minus 5x divided by minus 2x, well, the negatives will cancel, because if you divide two negatives by each other, they become a positive, so like that. And then a positive 3 divided by a negative 2, or positive divided by a negative becomes a negative, okay? So they're exactly the same, just written a different way, and you would get full marks in the exam for whichever one you decided to do, whichever method you decided to do. Okay, let's have a look at a different question then. Let's have a look at this question here that I've picked out from a GCSE paper. Given that y is positive, make y the subject, and my equation is y equals ay squared plus n. Okay, first of all, let's get rid of the square root by squaring. So we've got y squared equals ay squared plus n. Okay, now I've got y's here and y's here. That's a problem. They need to be both on the same side. So I'm going to subtract ay squared on both sides. So I've got y squared minus ay squared equals n. Again, I've got y squared here and y squared here. So the only thing I can do is factorize. I can't take them away because that doesn't have an a with it. Okay, they're different, they're completely different. That's a y squared and that's an a squared. So take out a y squared and I end up with 1 minus a equals n. I couldn't choose just to take out a y, because if I did that, I'm going to have y minus a y in the bracket. Can you see there's still y's there? So you need to take out the maximum number of y's. Let's get rid of the bracket by dividing, because a bracket in maths means times. Okay, so I'm left with y squared, that cancels, equals n over 1 minus a. Right, a problem here. I've got y squared. How do you get rid of a squared? Well, you square root. So square root y squared and square root that. Well, if I square root a squared, it just becomes y over n over 1 minus a. And there we are. We've answered that question. Okay. Let's have a look at one final question before we end our lesson. Let's say make E subject, and the question is T equals M 1 plus E over 1 minus E. Okay. First of all, let's get rid of the bracket of 1 minus E. So it's a divide by 1 minus E, so you get a times by 1 minus E on both sides. So that's T times 1 minus E. This side's just left with M times 1 plus E, because a times by 1 minus E and divide by 1 minus E cancel each other out. I'm going to expand the brackets because I can't do anything else with these. So I'm left with T minus ET equals M plus ME. So again, I'm a little bit stuck here because I've got E's on both sides. Up to you, you can either take the ET on the other side or the ME on the other side. For some reason, I'm just going to decide to take off the ME. Again, it'll be exactly the same if you do it the other way. So I'm going to do T minus ET minus ME equals M. Let's get rid of the T by subtracting T on both sides now, because that doesn't have an E with it, so there's no point having that. That goes. Minus ET minus ME equals M minus T. Right. Take out an E. So I'm left with minus T minus M equals M minus T. So I factorized. How do you get rid of a bracket? Well, I divide. Okay. Well, that cancels, as you can see. So you're left with E equals M minus T over. Oh, is that correct? Yeah. Over, oh, wrote that one incorrectly. just got a bit confused, minus t minus m, and there we are. Okay, all done. Let's get rid of that. Sometimes it does it with the tablet. There we are. Okay, rightio. Let's have a look at a final question. Okay, this time let's have a look at make R the subject. And we're going to look at A equals pi in brackets R plus R and R minus R. Now be careful here. We want the little r as the subject of the formula. The capital R is different. Okay, right. We have a bit of a problem here because I could times, this is a high level question. It's worth 4 marks in the GCSE exam. Now I could multiply this out and let's see what that happens if you want to do that first. And then we'll see what other method we need to do. If I times it out, I get r squared minus rr plus rr minus r squared. Okay, well that cancels. So I'm just left with A equals pi times r squared minus r squared. Right. Okay, so now what am I making? Making little r the subject of the formula, aren't I? So I'm going to divide by pi first. Equals r squared minus r squared. Now I can get rid of this capital R squared. I'm going to do A over pi minus r squared equals minus r squared. Right. Slightly tricky here. I've got a minus in front of here. What's the invisible number in front of the r? It's 1. So how do I get rid of times by minus 1? Well, I divide by minus 1. And if I'm going to divide by minus 1, what's going to happen is that these are going to change signs. So I'm going to have minus a over pi plus r squared equals r squared. Now I could just find the square root to get rid of that. Minus a over pi plus r squared equals r. And there you are. That's the subject of the formula. Now, the other way was without timing this out. Here is to spot that this was the difference of 2 squares. And we would straight away have gone from there to there. Okay, because that's the difference of 2 squares. Because, for example, you will have, I don't know, x squared minus 4. That's the difference of 2 squares, isn't it? Because you would have x plus 2 and x minus 2. Okay, and so on. So it's just about spotting different things like that. This is why it's a high level question, because there's a difference of 2 squares involved there. You could multiply the brackets out, or if you can identify that it's difference of 2 squares, you could miss the multiplying bracket step out. That was it for today's lesson. Thank you for watching.